Namaste, everybody. And as always, we will very briefly summarize what we have covered so far. So we are right now covering the first chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutra called Samadhi Pada. And the first chapter is addressed to the advanced yogi. It is addressed to the yogi who has gone through Vritti Nirodha and is ready for Samadhi. And today will be the last session on the first chapter. And from the next session, we'll go into the second chapter, which is Sadhana Pada. So what we covered is that our consciousness, the essential nature of our consciousness is complete stillness. But we don't experience it because our mind is constantly getting modified from the sense data coming from outside. So we constantly, there is stimulus, which is modifying the mind. And so it is like, on the surface of the lake or a river, there is movement, and therefore the bottom of the lake is not visible. The stillness is not visible. And this is what Patanjali called vritti. And he defined yoga is the stoppage of vrittis. So when the vrittis stop, the stillness of consciousness becomes evident. And there are, to do that, he says, you need to do continuous, uninterrupted practice of sadhana, abhyas, and to slowly develop vairag. Vairag is dispassion towards pain and pleasure, dispassion towards the pleasures of the world. Slowly develop it. Vairagya does not mean self-denial. Self-denial, he says, it is self-defeating because your mind is thinking about it and you are, forcing yourself to deny something. It is gradual withdrawal so that those pleasures don't have any hold on you, right? And vritti nirodha is a negative aspect. Once the vrittis have been diminished, you are ready for samadhi, which is the positive aspect. Samadhi is the one which takes you towards self-realization, towards bliss. Then he also talked about the 9 distractions yogi will experience, will face. And he talked about the ways of, dealing with those distractions. And today we will cover the stages of samadhi. Please understand that this part, these 6 or 7 shlokas that we will cover today, is a work of absolute genius on part of Patanjali. Because samadhi is a completely mystical process. It is beyond language. And yet he has been able to put it in steps so that the logical mind can kind of get a sense of it. You cannot understand samadhi, you'll get a sense of it, but he puts it in such small logical steps that you don't know where that leap has happened from logic to mysticism. So it's a work of real genius. And so today we will cover that. And before that, let me just, as always, share my screen and show you the shlokas that we will be covering. Okay. So this is the 7th talk in the series, and today we'll be talking about samadhi. There are 6 shlokas that we'll be covering today. The first one is a concept called samapti, and I will talk about that. It's a state of complete absorption of the mind, free from vrittis. It is absorption into the perceiver. Who is perceiving? The means of perception, with an instrument through which we perceive, the mind, and the perceived, the object that we are perceiving. And it is like a polished crystal which takes on the color of that on which it rests. So a piece of chalk which is covered with vrittis will not be able to reflect uh, the surrounding, but a polished crystal will reflect the surrounding. And that is the state, that is a good simile to understand uh, samapati. And then he talks about savitarka meditation, savitarka samadhi, which is word, form, and resulting knowledge, shabda, artha, and jnana. In this state of samadhi, these are mixed up. And this is called samadhi with reason. That means your language, logic is still working at this stage, right? And nirvitarka samadhi is called samadhi without reason. This happens when the memory is pure. We'll go into all this. I'm just reading the slokas out to you. When the memory is purified, there is no awareness of the ego sense. And that is when the true knowledge of the object starts manifesting, right? Okay. And in this same process, he explains the other stages of samadhi, which is savichara, nirvichara, ananda, asmita. We have covered this to some extent in the previous times. If I were to go back, what we have said, the stages of samadhi flows from thinking to observation, to reflection, to bliss, to the complete loss of duality. There's no ego, right? And there is also, he will talk about what is samadhi with bija, samadhi with seed, and samadhi nirbija, what is samadhi without seed. Okay, so this is what we'll be covering today. Okay, here we go. Stop sharing your screen and we are back to normal. Right. So let's talk about samapati first. So samapati is a state where a person who has practiced meditation will very quickly get into absorption, right? Very quickly. You close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out, and very quickly your mind has become still. You can feel the consciousness operating, right? And this is because of the earlier stages where vrittis have been diminished or reduced. So your mind is not so disturbed. You're not thinking all kinds of thoughts. There are no concerns, worries, etc. And your mind can get into very quick meditative mode. That is all that samapati is. And samapati is required for samadhi because in samadhi, what is happening is that you are absorbing whatever the object it is, which is propelling that samadhi consciousness. So to propel the samadhi consciousness, you need an object, and I'll talk about that. And at a very higher stage, even that object is dropped, right? So samapati is that your vrittis are so diminished that you can get into the concentration of the object completely single-mindedly with ekagrata, right? Now, this is a good place to understand the nature of the mind. The mind gives the impression that it is something solid. But the fact is that there is nothing solid about the mind. It is just a process. It is a wave rather than a substance. And why do I say this? Mind is nothing but a kind of a swirl of thoughts. But those thoughts are moving at such speed that it gives you a sense of continuity, right? And therefore you think that the mind is something solid. It's something which I cannot fight, something which I cannot control. So those are the things which we experience with our minds. The mind is very difficult to control. I want to do this, but my mind is not concentrating on this. This is our everyday experience, right? But really what is happening is that the mind is working in a field of consciousness, meaning that imagine that consciousness is a sky. Sky is just empty, still, right? And thoughts are like clouds moving in the sky, right? And so you cannot control the movement of the clouds. So you cannot control the movement of thoughts. Thoughts will be there, right? The only way to control it is not to fight the thoughts, because the cloud, like just like the clouds, the thoughts will be there. There's nothing you can do about it. But only way to do it is to become an observer. You just observe your thoughts. You observe the clouds. You observe the passing of the clouds. And then you can get a sense that there's a sky and there are clouds that are moving, right? So you are observing the clouds from the perspective of the sky. And this is very doable. And this is, the first benefits of a meditator will get him or her to this stage, right? So very important, if I were to take this into samadhi, our normal consciousness, waking consciousness, like conscious just now, is about the outside flowing in. So it is such that, you are listening to me, so the outside is flowing in, right? So every time there's some stimulus outside which is flowing in, right? That is a normal state. In samadhi, what happens is the inside flows out. In samadhi, the inner stillness flows out. Samadhi reverses the flow of consciousness. The normal is outside flowing in. In samadhi, the inside flows out. So in samadhi, as you go through the steps of samadhi, what you experience is that the outside world is like our movements on the stillness of your consciousness, right? While in normal waking state, it appears that the outside world is bombarding your mind. But in samadhi consciousness, the outside world is happening, it's going up and down, playing its drama, playing its song on the stillness of your consciousness. So this is the difference. So the inside flowing out is samadhi, while the outside flowing in is samsara, worldly life. Samsara is outside flowing in, while samadhi reverses that. So that is the process to understand, right? Now, the first stage of samadhi, as Patanjali puts it, is what is called savitarka. So he says the initial stage of samadhi, your logic, reason, your mind, language, those are still operational, right? So any object has got three aspects, described in Sanskrit as shabda, artha, and jnana. So shabda is the name you give to the object. Let's take the example of shivling. Suppose you are the object on which you are meditating is shivling. It could be anything else. It could be om. It could be just your breath, whatever it is. But suppose it's shivling, then shivling has got three aspects. The name shivling, right? How the shivling is perceived by you, by your mind and senses. So it's the form shivling, the color of the shivling, the consistency of the shivling, all the physical aspect, the form of shivling, which is called arth, right? And there is a meaning of shivling, whatever that meaning is. The meaning of shivling can change as you go through the steps of meditation, but whatever the meaning is, there's a meaning of shivling. So in normal consciousness, these three are mixed, they appear together. So when you think of shivling, the word, the form, and the meaning come together, right? But in Savitarka Samadhi, what happens is that these three get distinguished. The word, the form, and the meaning gets separated. It's distinguished. You can see the three separately. So that is what you achieve in Savitarka Samadhi. However, what also happens is those three are mixed up. So sometimes those three appear separately, but at the same time, or one of them can appear and they can appear in a sequence, but they're mixed up, right? So anybody who has meditated, you close your eyes, and when you say Om, so you know the symbol of Om, the sound of Om, and whatever the meaning you have of Om in your memory comes together, right? But in Savitarka Samadhi, when you do that, it is possible to separate the symbol, the name, and the meaning. It gets separated. Your thinking kind of slows down and it can separate these three. That is Savitarka Samadhi. But in that Samadhi, the reason is still operating. That's why it's called Samadhi with reason, or it's called Samadhi with question, right? The other end of the scale is Nirvitarka Samadhi. So in Nirvitarka Samadhi, this is very important. In the shloka says, after the clarification of memory, that means Smriti Shuddhi, after the clarification of memory, when the mind is devoid of self-awareness, the true knowledge of the object begins to shine forth. So what happens is, when we see something, our memory projects its distortions of that object on that object, right? So the famous example of, you see a rope and you actually there's a rope, but you see a snake. What's happening is your mind is projecting something on it. This is the famous example, but this is true for anything. So even on a Shiva Linga, your memory will project whatever is stored in your mind about the Shiva Linga, on the Shiva Linga. It is therefore quite impossible to get the real meaning of Shiva Linga, because your memory will block it. Your memory will project its own interpretation on the Shiva Linga. So whatever you think you're seeing is basically your interpretation of the reality. We don't have the capacity now. In Samadhi, you can build that capacity, but don't have the capacity now to see something as it is, to get its meaning as it is. We don't have that capacity, right? The second thing to understand is that there are two things. There is memory or smriti, and there are impressions imprinted on that memory from our past experiences. What we are wiping out in the process of Samadhi is the impressions, not the memory itself, not the faculty of memory. The faculty of memory remains. We are just purifying the memory. We are ridding the memory of all the impressions. We're ridding the memory of all the impressions. So we are creating space in the disk for the real knowledge of that object to sit. Otherwise, the space is full of all the impressions, right? And this ridding of the memory is what is called Smriti Shuddhi. And it takes you into a stage called Swarupa Shunya Eva. Swarupa Shunya Eva. Once the memory is rid of all the impressions, then what happens is you experience, it appears to you that there's a void, that there's nothing in the experience. It's a complete void. And that is because the memory has stopped projecting things on that object. So it appears that there's nothing. But that is not true. If you continue, what has happened is that object has seeped into your consciousness. It has seeped into your mind. But since there's no memory, there's no you as such. You are nothing without your memory. There's no I sense as such. So it appears that there is absolutely nothing, right? But this, but slowly, you will see that the real object as it is, without distortion of your memory, is there. And that is what is meant by observation. This is observation, where you see things without the lens of the impressions in your memory. When you see things without impressions, the lens of impressions, you see something as it is. That is observation. All right. And this is possible. The thing to understand is that as you go through the steps of samadhi, higher and higher consciousness starts kicking in. Now, why do people do samadhi? Because there's something within a sadhak which is propelling him or her. There is the person has reached a stage in his karma or through his practices that the higher consciousness is saying, I'm not satisfied. I need to get out. I don't want to be imprisoned anymore with, the lower consciousness. I need to get out, right? So it's a higher consciousness which is kind of impelling the sadhak. It's a natural process. So when the memory is purified, it's a higher consciousness has kicked in. Even when the aspects of reality, the word, the meaning, and the form are separated, it's a higher consciousness. So at higher consciousness, sometimes after a round of meditation, when the sadhaka comes back to normal life, there's no memory of what happened in the meditation, because he's come back to lower consciousness, and the lower consciousness is not experiencing that. So there's no memory, right? So nirvitarka is when this impressions of memory are wiped out, and the object has the crystal has absorbed that object, right? And initially it will seem that there's nothing, because your mind is not there, your memory is not there, thoughts are not there, your mind is not there. So it will seem as if there's nothing, but actually the object has come in, right? And this is what will lead to the next levels of samadhi. So the next level is the scale from savichara to nirvichara, or which is like savitarka and nirvitarka was with reason and without reason. Savichara and nirvichara is with contemplation and without contemplation. It is reflective. So right now in savitarka, nirvitarka, we learn to observe. Now we are moving, the observation is ratcheting up to reflection. So what happens in reflection? So in savichara, nirvichara, we saw reason operates. So language operates. So you are seeing something as Shivlinga, the meaning of Shivlinga, the word and the form. So it's the object remains a language. The object is there as a word, as a meaning, and as a form. The object is there, right? What has happened is, as you moved up, that object is filtering in as it is without memory, but the object is there, right? In reflection, what happens is you start transcending language. So now this is difficult to understand. If people who have not experienced it, difficult to understand. But here now you're getting into the dimension of space, time, and pure idea. No language. Now there is no language. So when there is no language, the what that object is appearing as a pure reflection. And that pure reflection is completely without language, right? And that is what happens in the initial state. The Savichara state is the space, time, and ideation is there. And in Nirvichara stage, even that is gone. So it is just the object has gone completely. So the Shivlinga, so to say, has gone completely, and just your consciousness is flowing. So your focus has moved from the object to the flow of consciousness. Right? This is what is happening in the scale from Savichara to Nirvichara. Now, here a funny thing happens, and here is when you experience bliss. Now, why is bliss experienced theoretically explained? Theoretically explained is that miseries are because of thoughts and objects and disturbance of the mind, right? The nature of consciousness is pure bliss, pure Satchitananda, pure bliss, pure existence, pure knowledge, right? But that is blocked by the objects and memory and so on and so forth. All that is gone. So what one experiences is just pure bliss. And that bliss, the yogis say, is very different from any pleasure you have experienced in worldly life. It's not the same experience as experiencing a pleasure or a joy in worldly life. It's a far more intense experience, right? That blissful experience. And beyond that, so even the space is gone, time is gone, even the flow of consciousness is gone. What remains is just pure awareness. There's no ego, there's no I sense, which is called asmita. However, all this is called samadhi with seed, or sabija samadhi, which means even that awareness has got some activity, and unknown to us, that awareness and the object still have a interdependent, the seed and the awareness have an interdependent existence. So without that seed, there will be no awareness, right? So there is an interdependent existence, still exists, right? Although the mind has gone, the thoughts have gone, there's just pure awareness, but that seed remains. So there is still motion in that field of awareness. And without the seed going, nirvana is not possible. Without seed going, you will have rebirth. So the flow of karma has not gone, right? And to get to nirvana state, or what yoga calls kaivalya state, that seed has to be destroyed completely. It has to become nirbij. But even in this state, the yogis, the way they describe this state is that there's a feeling of complete fulfillment. They feel fulfilled. They feel blessed. They feel as if the heavens are showering blessings on them. It's like there's a feeling that they have been graced by a higher sacred divine power, right? They feel that they are experiencing a prasad, right? And they're totally absorbed in that transcendence. So it is like if you take sound and take sound to a very high vibration, it becomes silence. If you take light and take light to a very high vibration, it becomes dark. And if you take inner experience and take it to a very high vibration, it becomes a void. So that is what they experience, a complete void. There's nothing. Complete void, right? Shunya is what they experience. And from here, how do you go to Nirbij Samadhi? There's no path. Because there's nothing else to work on. You have Your mind is gone. You're just in a space of awareness, right? There's no path. You just live. You continue with your life. The river of karma will flow through, and that nirbij is a gift. It is not explainable in words. It's a gift. We don't know how it happens. It is inexplicable. And once you get that nirbij samadhi, then it's a grace, and then you are in a state of kaivalya. Then you don't come back. There's no more rebirth for you. And I will end with reading out to you how the maverick Osho has explained this state. So I'm just reading it out, what Osho said. When thoughts drop, the second thing to drop is the thing, the object. Suddenly, the whole world is full of beings, beautiful beings and supreme beings, because they all participate in the ultimate being of God. Definitions disappear. You cannot separate. All separation existed because of the mechanism of the mind. Suddenly, you see a tree moving out of the earth, not separate. Meeting with the sky, not separate. Everything joined together. Everybody is a member of everybody else. The whole world becomes a net of consciousness, right? Remember the movie Avatar? Whole body becomes a net of consciousness. Millions and millions of consciousnesses, luminous, kindled from within, every house lit. Bodies disappear because bodies belong to the world of things. Forms are there, but they are no more material. They are forms of moving, dynamic energy, and they go on changing. That is what is happening. Then you suddenly see birth is not birth, death is not death. There are changing forms, and the formless remains the same. You can see that luminous formlessness always remains the same, moving amidst millions of forms. The formlessness is moving within the forms, changing. The forms are changing, yet that formlessness is not changing. Moving, yet not moving. Becoming everything else and yet remaining the same. And that's the beauty and the mystery. And then life is one, a vast ocean of life. Then you don't see alive beings and dead beings. No, because that doesn't exist. It's because of the mechanism of the mind and wrong interpretation. Neither exists birth nor death. That which exists is birthless and deathless and eternal. But this is how it looks when you come out of your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atul Sinha ji, for a blissful talk. And I think now the floor is open for if anybody has any question. Jyoti ma'am. Ramesh ji. अच्छा, इससे पहले कोई पूछे, मैं एक बात पूछना चाहता था डॉक्टर साहब. At one stage you said in samadhi there are two parallel, the lower and the beyond. And one consciousness says, no, it has nothing to do with the lower world. And he wants to leave this and go beyond. That means that's the end stage.
Yeah, the end stage started. The end stage can take, maybe it can take some more lifetimes, but it has started. That means if somebody is somebody is attending this talk, or even if somebody is practicing samadhi, practicing, sorry, not samadhi, sadhana, practicing sadhana, it's an indication that that person is being propelled from within. The person is not doing it because it's a fad. It's a good thing to do, right? And there are people who start yoga as a fad. The people start yoga just for body kind of a thing. But if they continue with yoga, there is no way that the person will not experience, a thing beyond the physical aspect of yoga. There's no way that the person will not experience a difference in energy, something more occultish, or whatever you choose to call it.
Yeah.
So there is a movement, and only people who have reached that stage through their karma, through their practices, through their reading, etc., etc., are are doing that. So it is not it's, what should I say? It's not something which you just do
Yeah,
because
it's not sudden. It's a gradual process.
it's a very gradual process, right?
It's a slow and gradual.
It's a gradual process, and it is because now your higher consciousness is calling you. It says, "Boss,
Yes.
I've done this for many lifetimes. Now I let's get into the big boys game, so to say."
Very
So,
good.
uh,
Excellent.
mm,
Very nice.
and the so I mean, the one question is that who realizes the self? I mean, we talked about self-realization, Atma Darshan. Who realizes the Atman? Your, your mind. It's a very difficult question to answer in words, because it's only the Atman that can realize the Atman. Your mind cannot realize. Mind is matter. How can a stone realize life?
Yeah.
Huh? So your mind, your body, your mind, body, etc., are just the medium, but the ultimate realization is what? It is the Atman realizing the Atman. So as the tantric said, when you meditate, it's not you who are meditating. You cannot meditate. Your mind, body are all matter. You cannot meditate. It's a Devi who's meditating. It's Shiva who's meditating. Is the way they put it. So it is your higher consciousness which is meditating within you. You have given that higher consciousness space to come out by the initial steps of diminishing your vrittis and developing dispassion, and this regular abhyas, and all that, the ekagrata. And so the initial practices, you have created a space within your mind and your body for the higher consciousness start emerging.
Excellent. Very good.
But in normal life, wherever we are, a lot of people here will not be doing sadhana, but is to understand that the disturbed mind can be brought so-called under control through developing sakshi bhav, or just observation. Nothing else to be done, because you can't fight thoughts. Thoughts are like clouds. Clouds will come, it'll rain, it'll go. There's nothing you can do. So, like, even in sadhana, when people start sadhana, the impression they have is, I have to stop my thoughts. But the guru will tell you, no, you can't stop your thoughts. So it is to be able to see your thought from the perspective of the sky. You see the clouds from the perspective of the sky, rather than being kind of trapped in the cloud itself. So that is when you meditate, when you do sadhana, your thoughts will be flowing, and there's no problem with that. But you're not, thoughts will be flowing. There'll be some thinking going on. You'll be also even planning your day also. कि अभी जब खत्म होगा तो कॉफी पियेंगे, उसके बाद ये करना है, वो करना है, वो भी हो रहा है. So all that is going on. That process is going on. At least at the initial stages. At the later stage, when you get totally absorbed, that's a different issue. But
one last question. The disturbed mind, which is in literal meaning is disturbed man whose
Uh,
mind is not in place. I mean,
mm,
many thoughts are coming, talking all
mm,
sense and nonsense both.
mm.
So can that be also healed through this
Oh,
process
yes, absolutely. Disturbance is this.
without any medical treatment?
No, it depends. I mean, if you are a clinical case, then you will require medical treatment and drugs and counseling. That's possible. It's just like if you have, a heart problem or cancer or something, then it will be unwise to say कि नहीं meditation करो ठीक हो जाएगा. It will be unwise. You have reached a stage where it's become somatic, and you will need medical attention. So,
Okay.
and even to the extent that people who follow Ayurveda and all, they say for cancer patients, please go through the surgery and chemotherapy
Yes,
and
yes,
so on and so forth. So
yes,
they're not dogmatic, that they don't
yes,
say that
because, yes,
Ayurveda will cure
yeah,
everything. But
yeah, that's
Ayurveda will help in terms of the minimizing the side effects for
correct.
longer term cure, etc., etc.
Yeah, but it's
So,
a very slow and long process.
so if there's a clinical situation of the mind, you have what, attention deficiency, or you have a depression, or
Yeah, yeah.
you are bipolar or some such condition, then you will require professional help.
Okay.
I don't think anybody should. If somebody tells you that I will take care of it, then
Hmm.
look at it with some skepticism, right?
Okay.
It's possible. I mean, there are cases where just Ayurveda has cured, or just yoga has cured these aspects. It's possible, but
Mhm.
do it with some skepticism, right? But
Okay.
the for a normal disturbed mind
Mhm.
is, I mean, which is not reached as yet a clinical condition. For a
Okay.
normal disturbed mind, the yoga's definition of stress is very simple.
Mhm.
Very simple. It's one phrase: speed of thought.
Mhm.
If you have a high speed of thought, you are stressed.
Correct.
If you high speed of thought, you see yourself. Your high speed of thought, and you have you left home for work and you're driving. You have no awareness of your surrounding. Your
Hmm.
mind is thinking, abhi office pahunchna hai, I have to
Hmm.
do this, do that, blah blah blah. All that thing. Your high speed of thought. If the
Hmm.
thoughts are slowed down, then some thoughts are there, and you're looking around, looking at passengers in another car, or just the view outside.
Hmm.
So the moment the speed of thought comes down, then your stress level comes down. The disturbance of the mind comes down, and that is why it requires practice, and it requires a bit of a what should I say, dispassion,
Hmm.
vairagya from everything,
Yes.
vairagya from the results, vairagya from pleasure and pain.
Hmm.
For me, taking the working example, if you go to work and your superior is displeased with you or pleased with you, it's equal to
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No? So that is these are the things we can, from this whole samadhi, which is a very high level thing, but even at our regular life, we can take these
Hmm.
aspects out of it and improve our lives with
True. Very nice. Maybe Jyoti ma'am, you want to ask anything?
No, it's okay. It doesn't have a
No,
question.
it was very profound. I have to really think about
Yeah.
the latter half of the talk. Really try and understand. Maybe I'll listen to the YouTube
Yeah.
once it's put up a
Yes.
couple of times, because there was so much of new information,
Hmm.
things which I had never ever thought or contemplated upon. So it's quite a lot to process even.
So the latter part is quite a bit beyond understanding. It's very difficult to
Yes, it
understand it.
is. It is
Yeah.
difficult. Yes.
It's very difficult to understand it. If you just get a sense of it, basically
Yeah,
what is
I think
happening
so.
is,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
moving from thinking to sakshi bhav to observation.
Hmm.
Then, your observation has become so pure that, imagine that you're not projecting your biases onto something.
Hmm.
Ah,
When you don't project your bias onto something, then that becomes pure reflection.
Very true.
Right? And ultimately, what happens is completely mystical. I mean, you can't explain it, and even you are not that experience it. It's
True.
Atman experiencing the Atman, so to say.
It is a
Or
stage in
what
experience.
it is because the duality is gone. So at that
Yeah.
stage, there's no duality. So there's no language. The language exists in you me. You know, when there's no you me, there's no language. So it's difficult to understand. I must say this, and that's the genius of this man Patanjali, because he takes it with such small steps that where he kind of takes off into mysticism, you don't know. But the thing is, the idea is that uh, if you get a sense, then you are triggering your higher consciousness within you to emerge,
Explore.
which will propel you in this direction. That's why they say, why do you read Vedanta? Why do you read the Upanishads? Why do you read Bhagavad Gita? Is to create the kshetra, the field, the field to create the right atmosphere in which your higher consciousness can emerge.
Very true. Very true.
Chandrasekhar.
Atul, just want to ask you one thing about this.
Put on your video.
Yeah, okay. This you have mentioned about with bija and without bija.
Huh?
What is you mentioned about with bija and without bija? No?
Correct.
Seed, what is the seed that you're referring to here?
The seed is basically the samskaras, basically the karmic impressions.
Okay.
Which form this. So the seed is at two levels. One is the object itself. So what at least yoga says that to start meditation, you have to focus on a object. So our mind normally focuses on many objects. So to develop ekagrata, you focus on one object, right? And then at some stage in the meditation, you drop that object also, right? But even if you drop that object in your the awareness, which is just a pure awareness is flowing, there is a undercurrent of your karmic impressions, and that current has to flow through. So you've reached a stage where not adding any new karma, because you have gone beyond that, but the prarabdha karma has to flow through. So once that flows through, then you get to the nirbija stage. And yogis also believe that it's a gift. It's a gift from a higher power. So it's a prasad. It's a gift. There's nothing more you can do. I mean, like the one Buddhist guy who says all you can do is chop wood and eat the food and hear the birds sing. That's it. There's nothing you can do. But up to nirbija, you can go with your own effort. But beyond that, it's just grace. It's occultics. It's occultics. Yeah.
Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mameva Sarva Mameva Bijam Sarvabhutana.
Translate that.
He is a seed in everybody.
Huh?
Yeah, he says, I am the bijam, I am the seed in every
yes,
Buddha.
He's a
Buddha means
seed.
every creation.
So yeah. So there are.
I am alone. Only.
Yeah. So Krishna says that Maya is also divine, and therefore you cannot cross it unless you surrender to me. Is what he says. So there are like Ramanuja and Madhvacharya. They said surrender is even more important.
Sharanagati.
Sharanagati, yes, absolutely. So there are different schools. I mean, it'll get complicate the matter over here, but once you get on the path, you'll find your path. Find which school appeals to you. You'll find it on your own. So different schools have different methods, and Vedanta is different from. I mean, Advaita is different from Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita and so on and so forth. Every is different path, different emphasis. So, for example, in Jainism, the emphasis is more on Samagya Charita, That means the right conduct. So for them, conduct is more important. The path of ahimsa, brahmacharya, asteya, aparigraha, all that is much more important. So they say without right conduct, you cannot go. While Vedanta is more into, sadhana and
Vedanta. Vedanta.
Vedanta. Shramana, Manana, Atma Shastra.
Nididhyasana.
And Nididhyasana, Atma Shastratkara. So different schools have different methods. No one method is right or wrong. It depends on, your own orientation, your own karma. What you do.
So those who experience that kind of karma, like you said, what's the typical experience like? I mean, have they expressed ever, or they cannot ever?
I read out what Mr. Osho said.
Right.
But
you're one with the consciousness. You're one with,
you're one. That's what they say. I've even heard.
There is a duality there. So
I heard Sadhguru once. There's some video of him going around where he's somewhere near Mysore, sitting under a tree, and he got enlightened. And he explained exactly this, that what Osho said. I've heard a similar thing in the autobiography of a yogi, where there's somebody sitting and seeing the tree as a spirit, tree as a energy, not as a like a solid body, Yogananda. So that's how they describe it. And that what is samadhi is a question. It's a stupid question, because you have to get there yourself. What somebody describes or explains is just to motivate you. That's about all. But it's a stupid question. You have to get there yourself. The more important. That's why Buddha was actually quiet on what is samadhi and what is Atman. He was completely quiet. He said, to forget all that. You start following the Eightfold Path, do this meditation, blah, blah, blah. He says he was more into the action.
True.
I think Western theology also, they talk about regression and all that. No?
Yeah, they do talk about it.
And then you go back and see your past. I mean, my question was about whether when they experience that kind of a karma of the past or the ones that come out, that unfold in the future, I wonder how it would be like. I mean, like you said, how it would be for them, what the experience of that person, like Osho is talking about.
No.
But the karma also, does it run like a movie for you? I mean, I was just wondering, it runs like a movie for you. What you have done in the past, what is going
See, the fact of the matter is that the memory of all your past lives are there in you. It's blocked, but it's there. So vasanas are there. So with a certain trigger, it can come out. But just since you talked about Western psychology regression, so what they say is that you don't access past lives in any sequence. It's not that you access the immediate past life. So your mind will take you to whatever issue you are facing. So suppose, for just as an example, you're facing an issue with your child, for example, son or daughter. Then your mind will take you into some past life where there was some connection between that person and yourself in different roles. So, in some past life, that child in this life could have been your parent in some other life, right? And there is some unresolved issue, and then you get a connection. Oh, that is why it is playing out like this in this life. And so that itself, those kind of realizations, they say, is healing. That means you can accept the situation better. So that is the whole logic behind past life regression.
Okay. Good. I think.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr.
All right.
Sinha, for your blissful talk.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
And so we hope to listen again. Right.
So namaskar. Now, from next talk, we will go on to the sadhana pada, which will be less taxing, I must say, because it talks about two things. It talks about kriya yoga, which is for the middling yogi. So this is for samadhis for the advanced yogi. The kriya yoga is the middling yogi, and then it goes on to ashtanga yoga, which is for novices.
Okay.
So it explains that in the second chapter, and so we'll cover that. It will be more relatable to us where we are at the moment.
Yeah, great. We are looking forward to that next
Nama-
episode. Thank you so
Namaskara.
much.
Thank
Namaskara.
you. Thank
All
you.
right. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.